Continued series where we're exploring about the famous rabbis of yesteryear. Now we happen to be on the 9th of Shvat. Naturally, that's Tet Shvat over here. It's going to mark the Hilula of a former chief rabbi of Jerusalem, of Israel. His name was Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, Zecher Tzadik Libracha, very, very great rabbi. There's different opinions where maybe the date he was actually born. According to the main opinion, it was in the year 1813, but somewhere else it did say maybe it was in the year 1811. So that will have to have confirmation in of its own right. And he passed away on the 9th of Shvat. It happened to have been, that's the date of his Kilula. He would become a Sephardi chief rabbi, Rishon LeZion of Jerusalem, a very prominent position, we must point out over there. Now he was born in Salonika, near Salonika, in an area called Janishar. Naturally, obviously, it was part of the Ottoman Empire of previous day. He passed away in Jerusalem, so he was about 66, 67 years of age, if we go by the opinion that he was born in the year 1813. He was born in, so very interesting. We're going to explore a lot within regards to him. We have to point out that when he was only 15, he was taken by his father to Jerusalem, where he would go on to study high-level rabbinical learning in various different yeshivot. And at that point in time, there were great Turkish rabbis he was very close to. And I think the Turkish rabbis, in consulting him at the age of 35 on matters of religious law, they addressed him as a Gaon. He was actually titled a genius. That's how great he happened to have been. We have to point out over there. He was, and we're going to learn about some of the books that he actually wrote, various famous responses. I think in 1850 he was appointed a Dayan, a religious judge of the Jewish community of Jerusalem, and very much would have huge support from both the Sephardic community and the Ashkenazi community. At that point in time, it was a growing Ashkenazi community. 1857, we're going to see that he became a head of Jewish court, a chief judge. 1869, the rabbis of Jerusalem would go on to elect them as their chief rabbi, as a succession to the famous Rabbi Chaim David Hazan, who we're going to speak about in due course, who I think died that specific year. It's interesting, the Sultan, in confirming Rabbi Ashkenazi's election, would confer upon him the title of Hacham Bashi, whereby he would become the chief rabbi of Palestine, which was a post he would hold for a staggering 12 years. Very, very impressive time period. And he would also get decorated with an order of the Medjidi, I believe. And I think it would be the Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria, when at Jerusalem, would decorate him with a Franz Joseph medal also. And it's actually interesting, the tomb of Shimon the Just, Simon the Righteous, in Jerusalem, was registered in his name. Rabbi Ashkenazi was very, very popular among interfaith groups, even among Muslims and Christians, as well as among Jews. And we're going to see that, I think, at the time period of his funeral, various different foreign consuls will be present, and he passed away actually on January the 22nd in the year 1880. Let's explore a few more highlights within regards to his life. So, as I said before, he go on to become a chief rabbi. Just to point out also, he was buried in Har Zaytin, the Mount of Olives plot. He'd go on to become the 27th chief rabbi of Israel, which was a very, very prominent position over there. So I think the name of the city where he was born in was actually Larissa, and we've spoken about that on several occasions before. I think we recorded about maybe a video about 3 or 4 rabbis that were actually from Larissa in of its own right. It was in the year, I think it was possibly around 1820. It's varying different opinions. He would go to Eretz Israel with his father. His father's name was Rabbi Yaakov, and it's actually written over here. היה פעיל בגאולות קרקעות בארץ ישראל, ובין פעולותיו הייתה רכישת מערת שמעון הצדיק בירושלים. As we said before, within regards to connection, within regards to him and the burial plot of Shimon HaTzadik over there. פעולה אשר נודעה לה חשיבות רבה ביישוב הישן. So it was a very, very well-known landmark in itself, and very much he's well-known for the connection within regards to that. That's interesting. He would get married to Sarah, Rabbinit Sarah. She was a daughter of Rabbi Yitzchak Barchi, if I'm not mistaken. בהמשך נישא לאמו של הרב שמעון אשריקי, ואימץ את זה אחרון כבן. נבחר לדיין בדינו. I'm just reading here from Wikipedia over here, friends. So it says over here, נבחר לדיין בבית דין של הרב בנימין מרדכי נבון. He would go on to become appointed as a judge in the Bet Din of Rabbi Benjamin Mordechai Navon, a very prominent position. And B'Sifro, he was very, very well known for his book called B'nai Benjamin, the Sons of Benjamin, which, and Pirsema Rav Ashkenazi et Paskav. and various different psakim and Jewish laws were actually rendered over. But Tafkid says Shimesh Keshloshim, he will take on this role for 3 years, and I think it was Kamad year. Heitaf Reish Chavtaled, he was appointed to become a head of Jewish court in Av Bet Din. It was a very prominent position over there. And I think it was on the 5th of Adar in the year 1869. I think at that time period, Rabbi Chaim David Chazan, who was chief rabbi beforehand, I think the 26th Rishon LeZion he happens to have in, they would crown Rabbi Ashkenazi as a Rishon LeZion, as a chief rabbi of Israel. This would be a very, very prominent position over here. It says over here, Huchtar Rabbi Ashkenazi k'Rishon LeZion v'nasa b'tafkid zeh zman aroch yoter v'arba'at kodmov 12 shana ad ptirato. He would stay in that position until he passed away. So you can see he was in a very, very high esteem over there among the people, among the Jewish community. He had a good relationship with all the different Jewish community over there at one point in time, especially with the Sephardic community and Ashkenazi community. That's actually quite interesting. I'm not too sure. It could be he himself originally might have had Ashkenazic roots 100 years beforehand or 200 years before. That will have to be confirmed. Rav Akiva Yosef Shlazingar. He would actually give his approval over there inside that famous book, the Beit Yosef Chadash. It was inside the language of Greek, also like in Arabic and in Turkish also. הפטריארך היווני אשר היה בן בית בביתו פרנס יוסף הראשון קיסר אוסטריה אשר ביקר בארץ ישראל בשנת. He was very close with many different dignitaries of different countries, especially Austrian, Greek in of itself, and this famous the Caesar of Austria would actually come to visit the land of Israel in 1869. כיבד אותו באות כבוד על עבודתו הציבורית. He would give him great honors to Rabbi Ashkenazi over there also. Very, very interesting now. כמו כן, הרב אברהם אשכנזי קיבל מאסר משה מונטיפיורי. He actually received the famous philanthropist from the arguably in Jewish history, Moses Montefiore, גביע כסף מהודר עם הקדשה חרוצה כאות הוקרא לפעוליו הרב ובא כתוב. So we'll actually write inside this גביע in of itself. מנחת זיכרון לרב הגאון. Remember, it was a nickname, or he was known as a genius. Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, chief rabbi was. Avraham Ashkenazi, Chacham Bashi, Be'eretz HaKodesh Yerushalayim. And there's actual added abbreviations over there. Me'et Asar, Moshe Montefiore, Aleph Tammuz, Heitaf Reish Lamed Aleph. Other, let's just say, in of itself, abbreviations are actually used in the textual information over there, we have to point out. But Arov Yamav Shimesh Kerosh Yeshivat Bet Yaakov, very interesting enough, the Nasi Chevrat Yeshivat Achim. He would become if I'm not mistaken, he would work as a head of the Yeshivat Bet Yaakov. Remember, we've spoken about this place on various occasions before, and he was the president of the Chevrat Shivat Achim also, the tribe of brothers in of itself, as we can translate in English. So you can see he had various different important positions in his time. I think it was Kamot the year. Hitzap Reish Aleph. Rabbi Ashkenazi would see Leor. I think Yachad Im Hari Kipol. Yes, sorry about that. Just the connection went for a second. As we're exploring a few highlights with regards to famous chief rabbi Rishon LeZion of Israel, Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi over here. So he was the head of the Yeshivat Bet Yaakov, and he was the president of Shevet Achim. I think it was in the year Hitzap Reish Aleph. Rabbi Ashkenazi would say Leor, as we said before, along with Hari Kapiloto, the book called the Takanot Yerushalayim. Chamahil et hakol min hagei ha'ir hanogeim ledat v'halacha. It has a lot of connection with regards to Jewish law, with regards to various customs within regards to the city. So that's something we have to point out over there. And say Katab Be'itzonin HaLebanon Chabad Seret. So he was actually contributing to various different news publications, including How Lebanon and the Chabad Seret. So he passed away on the 9th of Shvat, which happens to be his Hilula today, in 1880. He was buried in Har Hazeitim, the Mount of Olives, Beroglot. לאחר שנים ארוכות בהן לא עוצרה המצבה שאותו ניסה לגלות נינו לשמואל אשכנזי אחרי מלחמת ששת ימים, after the 67 war. הצליחו בני נינו של רב אשכנזי שלמה ודוד לאתר מצבת הקבר הפגועה בשנת, I think in the year 2004. We would leave great descendants, and we're going to speak about them in due course over here. There was Rabbi Avraham who would live between 1859 to 1915, so he lived about 56 years. He was Haya Mamakimi Beit HaCholim Miskav Ladach. He would have a very prominent position connected to the hospital, which we've spoken about before, Miskav Ladach. He was a Chaver Ba'ad Ha'idah Sfaradit Yerushalayim. He was part of the Sephardi committee. V'Chaver Beit Din Sha'al Yada. ולאחר פטירתו של ראשון לציון הרב יעקב שאול אלישע הוצע לו משרת הרב הראשי. אחו סירב. I think he was offered possibly and to become a chief rabbi, given שלא רצה לשמש ברבנות, but I don't think he would take on that position. I don't think it was for an interview or in what specific capacity he was offered it in of its own right, or yes, they're very, very interesting. But his name was definitely flirted to become a Rishon LeZion, which he wouldn't become, he wouldn't want to become. And I think Haniach Acharav Katab Yad Rabim B'Shut Poskim, who would actually lead various Shelot, Shuvot, and questions and Psakim also. He would have a grandson, Rav Shlomo Ashkenazi. He lived between 1879 to 1948. Who was he? He was a Chaver V'ad Shchonat Ohel Moshe. He was part of the committee of the Ohel Moshe neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken. And he was actually married to Simcha. She happened to be the daughter of Rav Moshe Malka, so that's very, very interesting. So the descendants of Rav Moshe Malka would also be shared with regards to Rav Yitzhak Ashkenazi. Over there we have to, within regards to Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, the Rishon LeZion over there. Who was Rav Moshe Malka? Let's just speak about him for a minute. He lived between 1835 to 1900, so he passed away about 20 years after Rav Ashkenazi passed away. He was an educator. He was Shlichei D'Rabbanan. He was a great man of congregation. He was a Chazan. He was a Darshan, and was head of Jewish court of the, I believe, Sephardi community of Jerusalem. Rav Moshe Malka was. He was about 65 when he passed away. Also buried in Har Hazeitim. He lived at the time period of great rabbis like Rav Nachman ben Tita, Rav Elazar ben Tubor, and Rav Yaakov Shaul Elisha, if I'm not mistaken. He himself, Rav Malka, was born in Meknes in Morocco. I think his father was Rabbi Yaakov Malka, if I'm not mistaken, and that was a family that would move to Jerusalem. He would move at a young age, and he would work as an educator in Talmud Torah in Jerusalem, in a yeshiva over there, Sephardic yeshiva. He would be a chazan there, and he would go be very, very well traveled to Chutz Eretz, especially representing to raise funds, especially for Hebron and Jerusalem, two of the four holy cities of Israel. Was very much part of the Sephardic committee in Jerusalem. I think he would go on travels around Europe in 1865, especially around Turkey, as a Shluchei D'Rabbanan, once again representing the community. He would even go to Hungary, if I'm not mistaken, in 1871. Rav Moshe Malka was. So he was very, very well travelled all over different places in of itself. So that's something we have to point out over there. I think 1873 he would go to Egypt. Rav Moshe Malka was, once again, representing the community, and then we'd go to Amsterdam in the Netherlands over there, and really raise funds for the less well-off in Hebron and Jerusalem. And very, very interesting. He was very well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was 2 synagogues in the old city of Jerusalem, and Beit Cholim Miskav Ladach. So he was also very much working with that. That gives, like, let's say, a parallel within regards to his connection within regards to Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi's son over there, and will really do Rabbi Moshe Malka with a huge undertaking to the community in of itself. I think he was close to, himself was also close to Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, who we were speaking about before. It says, "B'shel iskop b'la'op tziborit, kamo lo minagdim rishonim, ha'barabanim Rav Rafael Meir Panizel, ורב אברהם אשכנזי יצאו להגנתו כשזה האחרון אף איים ליציב כן. Yeah, so very, very interesting. So he was actually quite close to them, if I'm not mistaken, over there. I think it was in 1886, after Rav Elazar ben Tuba would pass away, he was appointed, Rav Moshe Malka, one of the 7 Tovei Ha'ir in Jerusalem, and a treasurer of the Sephardic community, if I'm not mistaken, alongside Rabbi Nachman ben Tita, Rav Meir Ovadia, Rav Shlomo Abu Shadid, Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, Rabbi Moshe HaKohen, and Rabbi Moshe ben Samchon, if I'm not mistaken. So very, very prominent over there. And after Rabbi Yisachar Atzaraf would pass away in 1892, Rabbi Moshe Malka was appointed head of the Jewish court of the Sephardic community of Jerusalem. Very prominent position, once again, along with Rabbi Nachman Betito in of its own right. So you can see how well decorated these rabbis were in of itself. He himself passed away, I think, in 1900 on 19th August. And as we said before, his daughter Rabbanit Simcha would get married to the grandson of Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, as we pointed out here on the outset over there. Okay, let's speak about Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi's son over here, who would also, as we just mentioned about a minute ago, would become a huge rabbi. As for Rabbi Yitzchak Ashkenazi, we mentioned he lived between 1859 to 1915. So who was he? He was a Shluchei D'Rabbanan of Jerusalem. He was a part of the Sephardic committee in Jerusalem, was part of the Jewish court over there, and was one of the founders of the Beit Cholim Miskab Ledach, very prominent positions over there. He passed away in Egypt, I believe, in 1915. We're talking about 111 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And he was born in 1859 in Jerusalem. He was the son over there. I think when he was young, he would get married to Rabbanit Rivka, and they would have five children. I had to double check that. He would work as an educator in teaching Gemara in Yeshiva Tiferet Yerushalayim, which we've spoken about before. He was known as a rabbi with giving over grandiose sermons. He was obviously he founded the Miskab Ledach Hospital, one of the founders over there. He would actually travel to Chutz La'aretz to raise funds for the hospital. He would go to Algeria. He would go to the mountains of Kavkaz also, and I think go to Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, also, and would really travel to many places other people would not. So I think in 1900 he was appointed part of the Sephardic committee in Jerusalem. He was a Chaber Beddin of the committee of the city, and he was appointed various different important positions, if I'm not mistaken. And as we said before, when Rav Yaakov Shaul Elisha would pass away, I think he was offered in contention to become a chief rabbi of Israel. That's something we have to point out also. בחלק מתקופת שורתו של הרב בן ציון אברהם קוניקה בחוץ לארץ, ובקודו מלאכת עריכת כתב את התורני המעשה בידיו. Very interesting enough. I think during the first war he was at that point in time, אבל התקורא עם משפחתו באלכסנדריה שבמצרים, בעקבות הייתה אזרח צרפת. I think he had a French citizenship at that point in time, if I'm not mistaken. And he passed away on the 31st of August 1915. Rabbi Ashkenazi did in of itself. Obviously he was, very, very interesting. And as we mentioned before, his son, Rav Shlomo, would get married to the daughter of Rav Moshe Malka. So that was where the connection was over there. And obviously his son was a very much integral part of the Ohel Moshe neighborhood in Jerusalem. Now, Rav Ashkenazi, he would leave... this is son of Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, Rabbi Yitzchak Ashkenazi. He would leave Torah, colossal work. He would write a Shelot Shuvot Rok, which was left in manuscript form. I think Chelik Mishab would basu b'sefer Ma'ashi Ish, if I'm not mistaken, Ma'asei Ish, V'hamasav Barichat Rabbi Sion Avraham Kohenika. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that will be printed in that publication over there also. So that's very, very interesting. Friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring some of the history within regards to a famous rabbi of yesteryear. His name was Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi. He was a chief rabbi of Israel, very, very prominent rabbi. We're exploring some of the rabbis he was also connected with in his day and age. I think it's just very, very important to do that. Now, very, very interesting. Now, between the time period of Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, there'll be two chief rabbis. Rabbi Chaim David Hazan would be, I think, the 26th chief rabbi, and Rabbi Raphael Meir Hanizel will be the 28th Rosh Hashanah chief rabbi. Who was Rabbi Chaim David Hazan? He was born in 1790, passed away in 1869. He was nicknamed the Chad Badara, if I'm not mistaken. He was the head of the Jewish court in Izmir. Obviously, he would become Rishon LeZion of Israel. Very prominent position, the 26th one, I believe. He was born in Izmir, part of the Ottoman Empire. He would die in Jerusalem in 1869. I think his wife's name was Rabbanit Joya, if I'm not mistaken. His father was Rabbi Yosef ben Chaim Chazan. very great rabbi, and he would have many. I think he was connected to other great rabbis, like Rav Eliyahu Bachor Chazan, might have been his grandson, if I'm not mistaken. Rav Chaim Pelagi might have been his nephew, or he might have been nephew of Rav Chaim Pelagi. I'll have to double check on that. Rav Rachamim Eliyahu Chazan, Rav Eliezer Chazan, I think was his brother. Very interesting. He was born in Izmir to Rabbi Raphael Yosef Chazan, who was the son of Chaim, and Rabbanit Reina Falaji. So yes, that was a connection over there. Rabbi Chazan would become a shochet from a young age. His father was obviously chief rabbi over there, so put him in very good stead over there. And he was chosen as head of the shochet in the area. And by 1840, he was appointed to head position in city's rabbi community, a position he would hold till 1855. Very interesting. In 1855, he will be lucky enough, fortunate enough to move to Eretz Israel, land of Israel, settle in Jerusalem. He was appointed in the Bet Din alongside Rabbi Moshe Ben Avissi, Rabbi Yitzchak Cordovero, Rabbi Yitzchak Kalmaro, Rabbi Avraham Amar, and I think come on 1859, he would go on Shochet Rabbanan with 5 other rabbis from Jerusalem to Vienna, Austria. Unfortunately, he would fall ill quite early on, so he would return home. And I think in 1861, Rabbi Chaim Nissim Abulafia would pass away. And Rabbi Chazan was elected to take his place in the rabbinate as a chief rabbi in Israel, as well as Chacham Bashi of Jerusalem. And the two roles were united for the region with his election. He would work, especially with regards to promoting agricultural settlements in the land. He would work quite closely with Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Kalisha. I think the two would decide on planting willow trees in the settlement of Kafar Hashiloah. And I think he would take also an active role in the development of the Batei Maset complex, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was in 1863. There was a large assembly was held in Jerusalem at the initiative of famous Chazan, Rabbi Chazan Chaim Tzvi Schneerson, and other dignitaries from the community, with the aim of examining how many immigrants of the old Yishuv were willing to switch to agricultural work to develop settlements and region. You can see really was into agriculture and Yishuv areas as well. The assembly decided, among other things, that it was necessary to obtain a license from the government to purchase land for cultivation, and a 3-year support system should be established before beginning of the project. I think around 100 families would announce their desire to work as farmers on the land, and the project was headed by Rabbi Chazan here, Rabbi Schneerson and Rabbi Ben Avissi. The initiative, I don't think ever came to fruition, because I think there was some deterring relations between the Jews and the Ottoman Empire at that point in time. But you can see the willingness of building Eretz Israel and the agriculture of Eretz Israel in himself. He resided in Mishkenot Sha'ananim neighborhood. This happened to be the first Jewish settlement outside of the wall limits of the city. And I think when there was 1863 to 1875, a cholera pandemic, it would unfortunately reach Jerusalem at that point in time. I think it was in the year 1865 it would reach there. He would move inside the walls to share in the city's grief. And he passed away in the year 1869, I believe, or January 17th. It was actually this time period, because we just came out of January 17th. It was just over a week. He was buried once again in Har HaZeitim. I mentioned about he had a very decorated, famous family. Rav Chazan was married to Rabbinit Joya Esther. She was the daughter of Rabbi Yisrael Chaim Kohen HaMetzi, if I'm not mistaken. I think she sadly passed on in 1862, and he would get married in his final years to Rabbinit Sultana, if I'm not mistaken. Once again, he had an older brother, Rabbi Eliezer Chazan, as well as brother Rav Rachman Eliyahu Chazan and Rav Yitzchak Chazan. His sister was Rabbanit Kali Kaden, who became the mother, I believe, of Rav Chaim Pelagi. And very interesting. So you can see the great connections to Rav Avraham Chazan, 1815 to 1875 was Shochet in Eden, Gershon Chazan and Yoshua Chazan. Also, Rabbi Yosef Chazan lived between 1823 to 1877. Rabbi Eliyahu Bachor Chazan was connected. He was a head of Jewish court in Alexandria. Aaron D. Yosef Chazan was a writer and an editor of Ledino newspaper in Izmir. Rachel was, if I'm not mistaken, Rabbinit Rachel was a wife of Rabbi Bachor Chaim Yitzchak Nachum, who lived between 1834 to 1896. Rabbi Yisrael Sheikh Chazan lived between 1835 to 1896. Rabbi Moshe Chazan. Also, I think there was connection also with Rabbi Ben-Sion Meir Chai Uziel also, if I'm not mistaken. So that's it could be I'm not so sure how, through marriage in their later descendants also. Rabbi Ben-Sion Meir Chai Uziel will later on go on to become the chief rabbi of Israel, we have to point out. Now, he left great Torah works also. One of them was the Sefer Agana Sahar, al-Mishlei, brought based on the book of Proverbs. There was Sefer Choseh David, which is a Perush on Tehillim, and let's say B'derech Drash. Then there was the book called the Torah Zebach, which was talking about Shechita and Treifut. And then there was a Nadiv Lev, which was in 2 different volumes in of itself. This was printed in Saloniki. And then there was Yishrei Lev also, which was honest-hearted, let's just say, in of itself. Right. Let's just conclude with just saying a word within regards to Rabbi Raphael Meir Paniziel, who would become the chief rabbi after Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, who we were speaking about before. He actually lived between 1804 to 1893. Raphael Meir Paniziel was really during the time period of the Ottoman Empire, respectively. He was actually born in Bulgaria, which is also part of Ottoman Empire. And I think, to be precise, he was born in an area called Pazardzik, if I'm not mistaken. And he was about nearly 90 years of age when he passed away in Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken. So he had a very decorated family. Also, we have to point out over there where they would have various different interesting descendants, interesting professions. If I'm not mistaken, he would be a Rishon LeZion once again for a staggering 13-year period. If I'm not mistaken, it would be actually Rabbi Yaakov Shaul Elisha would actually succeed him as a Rishon LeZion, as a chief rabbi of Israel. So who was he? He was born in Bulgaria. His family would emigrate to the land of Israel when he was a child. I think in 1828 and in 1863 he was an emissary, a rabbinic emissary, on behalf of Jerusalem to various countries in North Africa. He would remain there, I think, on both occasions for several years, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to take just a short 1-minute break. We're going to be back in 1 minute over here, and just watch this space. We're going to continue just this production and this video over here as we're exploring the life of Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi and some of the rabbis connected to him, and then we're going to leave a goodbye message over here. So just wait 1 minute and we'll be back in 1 minute, friends.
I haven't got it because I don't have anything specific meeting. I just released WhatsApp. It's really targeted. Basically, you have a bazillion WhatsApp groups that you can pay to get your athletes. It's basically just kind of break of like someone came to $200 to place one ad. And all the data is self-reported, so there's no oversight. So using a WhatsApp API and a system now. Yeah. So the difference is making smarter. Simply isn't the same thing when you're talking with a system now where when you post to their groups, you're paying per view. You're not paying per post. So they're telling you that 5,000 views per post. It's not making it used to be WhatsApp.
Hi, shalom everyone, thanks for being patient over here. We're exploring life with regards to Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, who was a Rishon LeZion here of Israel at the moment. And we're just now speaking about a couple of the Rishon LeZions that would be sandwiched in between his tenure as a chief rabbi. We're just speaking now about Rabbi Raphael Meir Paniziel, who would become a chief rabbi of Israel after Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi was. As I said before, Rabbi Paniziel was born in Bulgaria. His family moved at a young age to the land of Israel. He would become a rabbinic emissary on behalf of Jerusalem, to countries in North Africa on different occasions of time, and would stay each time he would go to North Africa. He would stay there for several years. In 1845, he traveled to Italy as an emissary of Hebron, one of the holy cities of Israel, and was received with great respect. He was very, very well liked by many dignitaries, many people of, let's say, notable positions. I think Pope Gregory, one of the Pope Gregories, I'm not too sure which number it was in of itself, would respect, I think, meet him close to the Vatican, if I'm not mistaken, at one window of time, if I'm not mistaken. In 1880 it was that Rabbi Paniziel would become the chief rabbi, the Rishon LeZion, and in 1890 the Ottoman authorities appointed him Hacham Bashi, the head of the Jewish community of Palestine. He was held in very great, let's say, esteemed by all the different communities and authorities. It's interesting, he would author a Torah colossal book called the Lev Marpeh. This was in 1887. What was this book? It was a Talmudic naval of responsa and homilies. And what's interesting is his son-in-law was another future chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Yaakov Shaul Elisha would succeed him. I think he was a chief rabbi of Israel, of Eretz Israel, between the years 1893 to 1906. If I'm not mistaken, the Elisha family was also a very, very famous family of yesteryear. That's something that we have to point out over here. Okay, so friends, everyone, thanks for watching. We're exploring the life with regards to Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, who was a Rishon LeZion. He passed away in 1880. We're talking about 146 years ago here from time recording. He was buried in Har HaZeitim, and he was the 27th Rishon LeZion of Jerusalem, of Israel. Very, very prominent positions in of itself, and explore the highlights of his life over here. Now, friends, we're a community here. We are learning about great rabbis of yesteryear. We've recorded already about 1,400 videos of great rabbis of yesteryear. Don't forget, friends, please subscribe to the channel over here. We're trying to get to 8,500 subscribers, Bezrat Hashem, by the Jewish festival of Tu B'Shvat, which is going to be next week. Let's see if we can get to that. And we do tours all over Israel and record various other contents over here. So welcome anyone if you're new watching live, and take care and have a great day. Thanks for watching.